Your brain is not fixed. Every single day, the habits you repeat are literally rewiring your neural pathways, and most people have no idea they're wiring themselves for stress instead of joy. By the end of this video, you'll know the 10 habits neuroscience says can rebuild your brain's default setting from anxious to content, and none of them require a personality transplant. Here's the thing most people get wrong about happiness. They treat it like a destination. Get the job, get the relationship, get the house, then you'll be happy. But decades of research in positive psychology point to something different. Happiness isn't a finish line. It's a byproduct of what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to physically reshape itself based on repeated experience. Every time you practice a thought pattern or behavior, you strengthen that neural pathway, like wearing a path through grass. Do it enough, and it becomes the default trail your brain takes automatically. So today, we're covering 10 specific, research-backed habits that reshape those pathways, what the science says, why it works, and how to actually start. Let's get into it. Habit 1, gratitude journaling. Psychologists Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough ran a study where participants wrote down things they were grateful for once a week. After just 10 weeks, that group reported significantly higher life satisfaction and fewer physical complaints than groups who journaled about neutral events or hassles. Here's why it works neurologically. Gratitude practice activates the medial prefrontal cortex, a region tied to reward processing and value judgment. You're not just feeling grateful in the moment. You're training your brain to scan for positive things by default, the same way a pessimist's brain is trained to scan for threats. Practical takeaway. Write down 3 specific things you're grateful for each morning. Not my family, but the way my sister made me laugh on the phone yesterday. Specificity matters. It forces deeper processing. Habit 2, regular aerobic exercise. You've heard exercise releases endorphins 1,000 times, but the real story is more interesting. Exercise triggers neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, a region tied to mood regulation and memory. A landmark study out of Duke University found that regular aerobic exercise was as effective as antidepressant medication for treating moderate depression over a 16-week period, and participants who kept exercising had much lower relapse rates 6 months later. It's not about marathon training. Even 20 to 30 minutes of brisk walking, most days of the week, is enough to trigger these changes. Practical takeaway. Pick a form of movement you don't dread. Walking, cycling, dancing, and do it most days rather than going all out once a week. Habit 3, mindfulness meditation. This one has some of the strongest brain imaging evidence behind it. Studies using MRI scans, including research out of Harvard led by Sarah Lazar, found that just 8 weeks of daily mindfulness meditation physically shrank the amygdala, your brain's fear and stress center, while thickening areas of the prefrontal cortex linked to self-awareness and emotional regulation. In plain terms, meditation doesn't just help you feel calmer in the moment. It restructures the brain regions responsible for how reactive you are to stress in general. Practical takeaway. Start with 10 minutes a day. Apps aside, the simplest version is just sitting quietly and returning your attention to your breath every time it wanders. Consistency beats duration here. Habit 4, prioritizing sleep. Sleep isn't downtime for your brain, it's active maintenance. During deep sleep, your brain clears out metabolic waste through what's called the glymphatic system, and during REM sleep, it processes and files away emotional experiences from the day. Chronic sleep deprivation has been linked in research to a more reactive amygdala and a weaker connection between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. Essentially, a sleep-deprived brain overreacts to stress and struggles to regulate it. Practical takeaway. Protect a consistent sleep and wake time, even on weekends. Consistency matters as much as total hours. Habit 5, strengthening social connection. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on human happiness, tracking people for over 80 years, found that the single strongest predictor of happiness and health in old age wasn't wealth or career success. It was the quality of close relationships. Social connection triggers oxytocin release and dampens activity in the brain's stress circuitry. Loneliness, by contrast, has been shown to activate threat detection regions similarly to physical pain. Practical takeaway. Prioritize depth over breadth. One honest, 20-minute phone call with a close friend does more for your brain than an hour scrolling through 200 acquaintances' updates. Habit 6, practicing acts of kindness. Sonja Lyubomirsky, a leading happiness researcher, found that people who performed several acts of kindness in a single day reported meaningful boosts in well-being, and the effect was strongest when the acts were varied rather than repetitive. Giving activates the brain's reward circuitry, specifically the ventral striatum, sometimes even more strongly than receiving does. Researchers call this the helper's high. Practical takeaway. Pick one small, specific act of kindness to do today. Variety keeps it from becoming rote. Habit 7. Cognitive reframing. This is a core technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. Reframing means catching an automatic negative thought. I failed. I'm terrible at this. And consciously examining it. Is that actually true? Or is it one data point I'm overgeneralizing? Neuroimaging studies show that this kind of reappraisal activates the prefrontal cortex to actively downregulate amygdala activity. Over time, repeated reframing trains this regulatory pathway to fire more easily and automatically. Practical takeaway. Next time you catch a spiral thought, ask, what's a more balanced way to see this? Not toxic positivity, just accuracy. Habit 8. Spending time in nature. A study published in PNAS found that participants who walked for 90 minutes in a natural setting showed reduced activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex, a region linked to rumination, compared to those who walked in an urban environment. Nature exposure appears to lower cortisol and give the brain's attention systems a chance to rest, an effect researchers call attention restoration. Practical takeaway. Even 20 minutes in a park, phone away, can measurably lower stress hormones. Habit 9. Setting and pursuing meaningful goals. Happiness researchers distinguish between pleasure and eudaimonia, a deeper sense of meaning that comes from progress towards something that matters to you. Working toward autonomous, personally meaningful goals, not ones imposed by others, is consistently linked to higher life satisfaction in self-determination theory research by Deci and Ryan. It's the progress, not just the achievement, that matters. Your brain releases dopamine on the way toward a goal, not only when you cross the finish line. Practical takeaway. Choose one goal that's genuinely yours, not one you think you should want, and break it into a visible next step. Habit 10. Limiting passive social media use. Research, including studies out of the University of Pennsylvania, found that reducing social media use to about 30 minutes a day led to significant drops in loneliness and depressive symptoms within just 3 weeks. The distinction matters. Passive scrolling, consuming others' curated highlights without interacting, is linked to more social comparison and lower mood than active use, like messaging friends directly. Practical takeaway. Notice the difference between scrolling and connecting. Cap passive use and lean into the active kind. Let's run through them one more time. Gratitude journaling, aerobic exercise, mindfulness meditation, prioritizing sleep, social connection, acts of kindness, cognitive reframing, time in nature, meaningful goals, and limiting passive social media. None of these require you to overhaul your life overnight. Neuroplasticity rewards repetition, not intensity. Pick one habit from this list, just one, and commit to it for the next 2 weeks. That's enough to start laying down a new pathway. If this helped you see happiness as something trainable rather than something you're waiting for, hit subscribe. I break down the psychology behind everyday life every week. And let me know in the comments, which of these 10 are you starting with?